How will you convert those who are supportive of him to voters for you?
Yeah, I don't know that we'll necessarily convert all of Trump supporters. That's not our goal.
Do you need to?
Our goal is to definitely talk to people. No, we don't. We don't need to.
So the news we've been hinting at for the past few weeks is now official. Good old Jasmine Crockett has indeed decided to run for U.S. Senate in the state of Texas. And much as you would expect, much like her decision to run in itself, the early days of the campaign are already off to a completely ridiculous, delusional, and ultimately egotistical start. You know, you're dealing here with a woman who seems to believe the function of elected office is to be a social media influencer. And in the theme here of the narcissism, you could argue that she's actually screwing over the wider Democrat Party as a whole, because she's going to suck all of the money and attention that otherwise should be used for practical swing state races, you would think, to her own little attention-grabbing, egotistical campaign. And we'll tell you all about this today because, you know, on one hand, you have that aspect of it. On the other hand, you would think to yourself, hey, I'm running in Texas. This is a state that Donald Trump won by 14 points. I don't think a Democrat has won elected office there for the past, I don't know how many decades, right? Maybe I should move to the center. Maybe I should not act like such an idiot all the time and try to make an attempt to make any appeal to Trump voters. And she's just straight up saying in her first interview since the announcement, yeah, no, I'm that popular. I don't need them. Like basically just doing the Katie Porter thing all over again. So we'll get into all this again. Jasmine Crockett running for Senate and the lowlights we've already gotten within the first 24 hours. Let's get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That's the best way to support our work. It also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, you know, I'm going to keep going on this theme of the narcissism, the ego, because this is something that even, of course, her campaign staffers that got fired out of the office have reported on, and you can clearly see it. But if you still can't catch on the theme of what I'm talking about, I mean, just take a look at her introductory campaign ad, because this does tell you everything.
How about this new one they have? Their new star, Crockett. How about her?
She's the new star of the Democrat Party, Jasmine Crockett. They're in big trouble.
But you have this woman, Crockett. She's a very low IQ person.
I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person. Crockett. Oh, man. Oh, man.
She's a very low IQ person.
Somebody said the other day she's one of the leaders of the party. I said, you got to be kidding.
Now they're going to rely on Crockett. Crockett's going to bring them back.
Wow, guys, wasn't that so cool? So much aura. She's such a girl boss. What a queen. She crossed her arms and everything. Yeah, you know, this is what people want to vote for. It's worked in every election it's been tried. Yeah, she's so tough. Tough woman, isn't she? Guys, as I've been saying, there's an old phrase that goes, politics is show business for ugly people. And I think in the case of Jasmine Crockett, it's absolutely true. You know, this is someone, as I said, clearly at some point in their life wanted to be a celebrity, right? Either influencer, rapper, actor, something, right? Never made it for obvious reasons. And so she basically treats the pulpit of Congress and everything else as that opportunity, right? I'm an influencer now. And this, by the way, has been widely reported. We talked about that Atlantic article, the profile they did on her that concluded what an insane narcissist she was, right? Apparently her lock screen on the phone is a picture of herself. She demands that the staff pick her up. It can't be a regular car, a regular Uber. It has to be like a black Cadillac or Escalade or something like that. 'Cause she wants to feel like this very cool celebrity. You know, I'm royalty. Yeah, I'm some random member of Congress. You know, it's actually been basically admitted that she uses those hearings for a performance, right? She wants the clip. She wants the engagement. Yeah, and I mean, it goes without saying that these types of people are actually extremely dangerous to have in power, you know, because the ego, the narcissism there is off the charts. But that is, of course, assuming that she's ever going to see power here. Now, that said, last night she also did do the campaign launch event, and, well, it went about as you would expect. Check it out.
Let's get into it.
Okay. She ain't never scared and she ain't never been. Always willing to go toe to toe against the president. I can't wrap my head around someone who votes Republican. She advocate for feeding kids, they protect folks touching them. Trump invading his own country with our army, what a joke. We remember Pearl Harbor by illegally bombing boats. What y'all thought we wasn't gonna do nothing, buddy? Think again. They only trying to scare out of running cause they think she'll win.
Yeah, don't you know, guys? This is what the kids are into. They like that hip hop on the MTV. And, you know, it's pretty hysterical because you'd have to imagine there's obviously a certain demographic that they're trying to appeal to here, but how much you want to bet a bunch of that audience is just like old no kings baby boomers? You know, you got these geriatrics in the crowd. What is this noise? But okay, anyway, so you have that. Here you have her too, by the way. You know, it's basically self-admitting that the entire idea here to run for Senate, much again, like I'm going to say her entire purpose in politics, because she's not exactly an effective lawmaker, is she, is ultimately to serve herself and her own ego. I mean, take a listen right here.
Especially in this moment. There are a lot of people that said, you got to stay in the House. We need our voice. We need you there. And I understand. But what we need is for me to have a bigger voice. What we need is not only a voice, but we need to make sure that we are going to stop.
Yeah, did you notice that? She doesn't say that we need to have a bigger voice. It's about us. She says me, right? I need to have a bigger voice. As I'm saying, right? Because that's her entire function in politics. It's all about her. Of course, I asked the question, why exactly do Democrats even collectively need Jasmine Crockett to have a bigger voice? Is it because she actually does something? Again, is she an effective lawmaker? No. It's so that she can scream, she can grandstand, she can cause more havoc. And for what purpose exactly? To get social media clicks? To get praise from the No Kings protesters? Wow, you're such a fighter. She doesn't do anything, right? No, it's about you amplifying yourself so that way you can just, I don't know, you like the thrill of being famous? I don't know, you're probably profiting off of office. I'm not exactly sure. But of course, we get the entire idea here, right? She is a self-delusional like person, all about her own grandeur. Okay, now take a listen as she's about to compare herself, right? The person who can't even speak English and acts trashy all the time to Barack Obama. All right, that's actually what she thinks she is. Okay, take a listen.
Yes, we can. Yes, I'm talking about President Barack Obama. How many no's do you think he heard before he got a yes? No, you can't win. No, the country's not ready for a black president. No, a black man can't get elected. No, your middle name is Hussein. No, you can't beat the Clinton machine. But every time they told him no, he looked them right in the eyes and he told them yes. He said, yes, we can. Yes, we can deliver on health care. Yes, we can enshrine equal rights. Yes, we can bring jobs back to America, create opportunities for all, and yes, we can save the economy after a Republican president sends it into the gutter. People ran lies, rumors, and tried to poke holes in everything about Obama, from his faith to his heritage. Falsehoods about his daddy, mistruths about his mama. There was even a question about his birth certificate. But he didn't let any of that get in his way. He worked.
Okay, yeah, you basically get the idea. We're not going to let her go on forever, but the point there is taken. She's trying to argue that, well, Obama was the underdog. Nobody believed in him, and then he became the president. So clearly, that's why I am the best candidate to run for Senate in a state that Trump won by 14 points just a year ago. Of course, there's a couple of problems with that logic. First and foremost, even Barack Obama did not win the state of Texas. I'm just going to point that out. But secondly, you are not Obama. You're nothing close to Obama in 2008. And thirdly here, you know, the reason, let me explain this to you, right? Because you keep hearing them allude to this point, they don't want us to run. And that is absolutely true. The Democrat establishment, both in the state and nationwide, probably sees Jasmine Crockett as the worst possible candidate for obvious reasons. But the logic she's applying is like, whoa, they've had their time, whatever. Okay, let me reveal a little secret. When you say they don't want me to run, you're not talking about Republicans. Okay, Republicans are not scared of Jasmine Crockett. As a matter of fact, we understand what a massive benefit you will be to us, because not only are you this like off-putting, very easy to dislike candidate, right, very unlikable, but secondly, as I've been pointing out about all of the radical Democrats, whether it's the Zoran Mamdani types or that girl who ran in Tennessee, now Jasmine Crockett, the issue that the Republican electorate has, right, we're the low propensity voters of America. So on these off-year midterm elections, our turnout is not that high. But the thing is, right, when you actually put a Democrat up there that does scare the Republican electorate, that's easy to campaign against, hey, like, here's the reason you're voting because you don't want to vote for her, then you're only going to surge Republican turnout, very likely, right? Don't get complacent, but still, right? That's my point. And it's actually a motivating factor for Republicans, not just in the state of Texas, but nationwide. Because what's going to happen in 2026 is that, much like Zoran Mamdani, Jasmine Crockett's not just going to be some idiot we talk about occasionally. She's going to be like this face of what the Democrat Party is. And yeah, newsflash, outside of your overwhelmingly majority black district that's like D plus 80, however blue it is, right? Outside of that, a lot of people are actually off-put by your behavior. They find you loud, obnoxious, annoying, very unlikable, again, as I'll say. So just to explain to you, that's the reason why Democrats don't want you to run. It's not because you're not going to win the primary. Obviously, barring some type of crazy event, you will. It's because they know the liability, the damage you're about to cause to the party. And for you yourself personally, I would argue the same thing about your career because, as I said, we've seen this same story play out. Stacey Abrams in 2018, she had the year, right? That was her moment. She came really close. She failed because, Georgia is a more red state, at least on the state level, right? And then she tries to do it again in the next few cycles. Guess what? Now she's irrelevant. Same story with Beto, You want a question of how this stuff goes in Texas? Ask Beto, who, by the way, I would point out, back in 2018, when he had his first campaign against Ted Cruz, was running in an environment far more favorable to Democrats because back then there was a widespread belief that, hey, anyone remember this from the 2010s? Texas was looking like it was going to go blue. Trump won it by, I think it was like 9 points. It was kind of close in 2018 and 2020. I think Trump only won it by 6. But what's happened in the next decade is Texas has only gotten more red, right? Look at the last election cycle. So that's all to say, right? You're running in a more red Texas than Beto will be, but somehow you believe the math is there because, as she said, she doesn't actually need other voters. She just needs the black voters are going to carry her through and the No Kings protesters, So that said, take a listen here as she admits that exact electoral strategy.
How you make voters who previously voted for Trump, particularly given that you have been an outspoken critic and he has inserted himself, just take your campaign video as is. He has inserted himself at every turn when it comes to your commentary. How will you convert those who are supportive of him to voters for you?
Yeah, I don't know that we'll necessarily convert all of Trump supporters. That's not our goal.
Do you need to?
Our goal is to definitely talk to people. No, we don't. We don't need to. Our goal is to make sure that we can engage people that historically have not been talked to, because there's so many people that get ignored, specifically in the state of Texas. Listen, the state of Texas is 61% people of color. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of good folk that we can talk to. We know that when Beto came really close, Beto, who is a progressive.
Okay, so I'm going to stop her right there. Basically, again, this is the Katie Porter saga. I don't really need to win the Trump voters. Well, here's the difference. Katie Porter's running in California. You're running in Texas. It went for Trump by 14 points. And in her initial interview, right, she's brushing it off. She's like, we don't need to win Republican voters. You don't need to win Trump voters. What are you talking about? Then she brings up, right, the theory that, the multiracial coalition is going to get me elected. Yeah, here's the thing. Notice how she says 61% of the state of Texas is people of color and not black voters. You know why? Because the large minority group in Texas is, guess who? Hispanic voters, Tejanos specifically. I have some news for you, Jasmine Crockett. Okay? These are not the typical minority voters elsewhere that, New York City, for instance, that just build this like super coalition for Democrats. Do you know for a fact, actually, nowadays, the majority of Hispanic voters in Texas are Republicans? They voted for Trump. They've not been ignored by the political system, actually. They just are not Democrats anymore. So, I'm sure that'll go great, right? The Tejanos, they're going to love Jasmine Crockett. Yeah, sure. Because that like multiracial theory has always worked for Democrats in that state, sure.
We know that he got 65% of the Latino vote. So what did they do after that?
Okay, Jasmine. Donald Trump in Texas got 65% of the Latino vote. That is true. You respond by saying you don't need to win the Trump voters. Like, they're not necessary to win. What are you talking about?
specifically went after Latinos. We know that he got close to 90% or right there at 90% of the African American vote. So honestly, what we need to do is start talking to the vast majority of Texas. I think my message is very much a mainstream message. I don't know who disagrees with the fact that affordability is a real thing, except for the president, who says it's a Democratic hoax. But when somebody goes to the grocery store...
Oh yeah, that's what Jasmine Crockett talks about all the time. It's not slavery. It's not calling other people racist. It's not just screaming incoherently about Trump. No, it's actually, she's always been a champion on affordability, guys. Yeah, totally.
But nowadays, whether it's in East Texas or whether it's right here in Dallas, Texas, or whether it's in Austin or West Texas, let me tell you, they are looking at those grocery prices and they are thinking we deserve better. Knowing that we do the amount of trade that we do in the state of Texas, yet right now there are these unwarranted tariff wars that is directly impacting us, knowing that we do agriculture big in Texas. We do everything bigger in Texas, but we do ag big, and understanding that we are hitting record-breaking bankruptcy filings by our farmers. Listen, my message is real simple. I'm looking out for you, your survival, and the survival of your kids as it relates to affordability, being able to actually go and access health care, being able to send your child to school, being able to afford a roof over your head. If that's not, you know, what Trump supporters want, then fine. Then they absolutely won't listen to me. But I'm here for the everyday person, the person that's not the billionaire on the list that Trump has decided to take care of, but the people that he left sitting out in the cold, just like he did when he decided to be sworn in, and he decided that Inauguration Day he would have it inside while so many of his loyal supporters were outside.
That's not true. His loyal supporters were not outside. They actually put us in the Capital One arena. Anyone who was at the inauguration knows this. But okay, that's besides the point. You always got to love when Democrats do this pivot, right? They try to say, oh, we're just about affordability and healthcare. After they, of course, celebrated the assassination of people with children that they disagree with. They've been rioting in the streets. They've been promoting policies such as, you know, putting trans in the schools and releasing 72 times, it's a real story too, 72 times past arrested felons out onto the streets so that they can light random citizens on fire. You know, this is the left. But then they say, what's wrong with caring about healthcare and affordability? Just so ridiculous. But anyways, okay, that's it. There you essentially have it. So here's what I'll say to the Republicans of Texas. Absolutely do not get complacent, because if people stay home and it's like one of those years where the Republican turnout's only 50%, which we've seen several times, okay, then she's going to be the senator. You can't allow that to happen. So you got to, like, if my theory is true here, part of the reason she's going to help Republicans is because she's going to scare Republicans into turning out, right? They're going to come out and say, oh, we absolutely don't want Jasmine Crockett to be the senator. But to prove that theory correct, you got to make sure you show up and vote. So definitely don't get complacent with her, because two things are true with her stupid little theory. She is going to raise a lot of money. That's true. Now, it's kind of good because she's probably going to divert a lot of money from other Democrats nationwide because she's selfish, but still, that part is true. And secondly, she is going to get high Democrat turnout. You have to expect that, okay? The No Kings crowd, they vote in every election, but they're going to be extra enthused to vote for her. She's going to run up the margins, certainly with black voters. Now, that's not enough in the state of Texas, but it's only not enough if you also have to show up by the same margins that Democrats are as the Republicans. Then Republicans win the state. So don't get complacent. Don't let the idea that, oh, she's totally unelectable to, you know, dissuade you from actually voting. So that's very important. But that said, if that does come true, then yes, this is a very stupid idea. And you can already tell right off the gates, the campaign she's not changing. She's not, right? She can do the pivot to affordability all she wants, but she's still as off-putting of an idiot as she always has been. And notice even in that CNN interview, she tries to say, oh, well, that's my campaign. It's all about the cost. It's all about affordability. Okay, we just saw your launch ad that was entirely based on anti-Trump, right? You're using him as the campaign platform. Oh, I'm the anti-Trump candidate, again, in a state that Trump won by 14 points. So, you know, even within 24 hours, she can't stay on message. She can't stay focused on her own kind of idea of what she thinks is the most electable position. But anyways, that said, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.